This is what we're doing. This is a 2.5 millimeter stone set in a piece of tubing. So basically it's a bezel set, faceted stone, and to be more technically correct, it's a step bezel set stone. Today we're going to tube set, chenier set, a 2.5 millimeter CZ, and this is our tubing. Measure your stone. This is slightly over 2.5. Make sure your tubing is at least 1/2 mil bigger and 1/2 mil smaller. So this tubing is 3, so it's 1/2 mil bigger than the stone measured at the girdle. And the inside is just under 2, so that's 1/2 mil on the inside. That just means that we'll be able to use our burr and make a step for the stone to sit on. Now for this, we'll need a round burr and a stone setting burr, and the stone setting burr just has a straight side with an angle on the bottom for the pavilion. Now to measure these, put the burr in the broad part of your calipers and turn it, because if you don't turn it, it'll register slightly smaller than it is. So this reads 2.52, which is great, and this one reads 2.53. So now we're set up. We just need to cut our tubing. Now we need to know what height to cut our tubing. So what we'll do is we'll put our stone table down, and then we'll grab it with our calipers. So we need to know the length of our tubing to cut. So what we're going to do is put our stone table down on the wide part of our calipers, and we're just going to read the height. So this is 1.7. So I'm going to cut my tubing 2 mils long. I have a good tubing cutter, they call it. It's actually a holder. It has the measurements on this, so I just set it for 2. Make sure the end of your tubing is square and smooth. Then you just put it in your holder and slice off a piece. And a really good chenier cutter has a thin slot for your blade, so it makes a nice straight cut. This is our little piece of tubing. Tidy up this rough bit in here. I just touch it with my round burr and it'll take that off. So after you tidy up the flashing, which is the rough bits from cutting it, I just use my burr and my Fordham, spin it up a little bit. We're going to sweat solder this onto our base. So the first thing we do is flex the end of it and place 2 bits of hard solder on it with the flex brush. I'm using a Smith's mini torch with a number 6 tip, neutral flame. Any torch will do for this because it's so small. So we're just going to gently heat this on and off until the flux dries out, because we don't want the solder to jump off. Once the flux is dry, heat it. This solder will just start to flow and stop. Now we're going to turn that up onto our piece of silver that we're soldering this onto. Just turn that over. You don't have to flex it or anything. Turn it over, sit it on the place where you flexed. Circle, because you don't You don't want to directly heat the tubing, otherwise the solder will jump up the side, and we don't want that. Circle the piece. Your flux will go clear, and then shortly after that your solder will flow. Now just the spillover from the flame will have your tubing plenty hot, so don't worry about directly heating it. And once it gets up to temperature, you'll see that nice silver line all the way around the base. There. Quench it and pickle it. After you've taken your piece out of the pickle, and I use sodium bisulfate for pickle, which is a strong salt. It's used to lower the pH in swimming pools, so it's readily available. You can use any pickle: sulfuric acid, nitric acid, citric acid, alum. I just use this. They also call it pickle safe. Anyway, try this and have a look, and you should be able to see a smooth line where your solder comes from the base up to your tube with no gaps. Should be perfectly smooth, no need for cleanup, and that's the reason that we sweat solder this on. So now you're going to take your sanding stick and just smooth, this is 400 grade paper, just smooth the very top. It's just to get the saw marks out and make it a little bit nicer. Now, if you're new to tube setting, I would suggest that you drill a 1 millimeter hole right down through, and it is in case your stone goes in crooked, it's so you can push it out from the back. When you get used to it, you'll be able to just push the stone in and it'll be level, and you can do what I call a blind setting. So now we're going to take our round burr and put a little burr wax or beeswax on it, and you're going to run it in just to the wide part of the burr. Turn this slowly. It actually cuts better when you're going slowly, so don't go past that point. Now, with small stones or with primitive cut stones, you don't have to use the stone setting burr. If you have one, just make sure you run it in straight, because this is the part where it'll go crooked on you. You really have to pay attention. Hold your handpiece straight up and down, check it from at least 2 directions, barely spin it up, and all this is for is so that the pavilion on the bottom of your faceted stone has a place to go. So now we're ready to put the stone in. So when you're ready to set your stone, put it table down on your bench plate. You want it on something hard, and you're going to push your piece straight. I'll back out. You're going to push the tubing straight down over it. Push. You should hear the stone click in if it's the right size. And if it's the right size, it will hold itself in. Yeah. So now we're ready to set this. Check it for level. I'm using it. This is a prong pusher. It's actually made for, it's a set of tools that are made for pushing multiple prongs or claws over equally. If you don't have one of these, you can use a bezel pusher, bezel rocker, and then a burnisher. But if you have one of these, half your luck, because you just get the one that just fits over your tubing, and you're going to push and wiggle like this. And what that'll do is it'll push the edge of the metal over and burnish the edge of the tubing at the same time. So that's set. And you can see how the edge is actually polished already. Done.